I'd like to welcome you to our meeting. This is, we'll be talking about our millage rate. We'll have a public hearing and invite you to come to the podium momentarily. Ms. Price, this meeting's been properly advertised.
Mr. Mayor, this is a special call meeting, and this advertisement has been advertised in the Henry Daily Herald on the following dates: July 9th, 2014, July 12th, 13, 2014, July 16, 2014, and July 19 and 20, 2014. Tonight's agenda was published on the website and on the first floor City Hall on July 17, 2014. Yes, requirements have been met for a special call meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, for the benefit of the members of the public in attendance, I would like to point out that Councilman Craig Elrod is attending tonight's public meeting remotely pursuant to provisions of Georgia Open Meetings Act, OCGA, Section 50-14(1)G, which permits a member to participate in a meeting by teleconference when that member is absent from the jurisdiction. Councilman Elrod, for the record, will you please tell us where you are now? I assume you're not in the city. Is that correct?
That's correct. I am in Seaside, Florida at this moment.
So you're outside the jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome. Welcome here tonight. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise? We'd like to have a pledge to the flag and invocation. I'd like to call on Mr. Pruitt for the pledge to the flag and invocation by Councilman Stewart.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Stewart.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we call to say thank you for all the blessings you've sent our way. We thank you for this great city. We thank you for all our citizens as we make the best for our citizens. We thank you for this mayor. And we thank you for this council, Heavenly Father. And Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless me on us tonight as we make great decisions by the city. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We have among us, which carry us down to item number, number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not necessary, and I'm going to remove the executive session and with that, entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
And a second. Stewart and Pruitt. Thank you so much. Ms. Price, please restate the motion and the second.
The motion is to approve tonight's agenda with the removal of item number 8, which is executive session.
Would you please vote?
Ms. Price, I'm a yes vote.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, there are 6 in favor.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you so much. 6 in favor. Let's move down to item number 5, discussion of 2014 millage rate. Ms. Grant, we welcome you at this time, Ms. Grant, to bring this matter to our attention.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. First item that we have on the screen is the advertisement of the 5-year history of the taxes that have been levied in the past. As you can see, from 2009, we levied 3.45%, the same for 2010. 2011, it was 4.39. For 11 and 12, it was the same, and then 2013, we had a decrease to 4.387, and if we remain at the 3.87 this year, we will have a 10.43% increase in taxes. On the screen, what we have up here now is the 20-year history. As you can see, the taxes went from 5% back in 1995 to the current rate that we're here to 2014, we were proposing 4.99%, but that has changed once we got the final tax digest to come in. I'm sorry, I'm having problems with this. When we had the budget hearings, we had a request we calculated the budget at 4.38%. We also estimated the tax digest at that time to be $674,424,731 based on the information that we were provided. We calculated what we thought the taxes would be based on the budget. We budgeted $3,370,000 for the additional staffing. Henry County came in and gave us a final tax digest of $716,000. When we make the calculation, if we stayed at the 4.997%, we would be $210,000 over. So we're recommending the 4.704%, which would cause us to be just short of our budgeted amount of $2,704. At the last public hearing, I received a request that asked me what was the tax revenue that came in over that period of time. I have here for you on the screen, and it's in your package. From 1995, we collected $2,230,518 was our total revenues, but budgeted revenues for the general fund. We collected $434,715,000 in property taxes. That represents 19.489% of our budget. To give you a visual, what we have here for you is a screen on the chart here. If you see in the blue, this is your general fund amount. In red is what you collected in taxes. And you can look at the percentages. Here's a chart now that will show you the percentages. We have applied, let me make that a little bit bigger if I can. In the past, we've collected as much as 29.49% of our general fund revenues was collected in property taxes. That occurred in the year 2009. I'm sorry, in 2009. If we budgeted this year, our revenues would be 25.95%. And that will include the public safety officers as well as the debt service. Can't pull up one of my slides, but I'm going to go back here. When we budgeted the millage rate at 4.387%, we had estimated revenues at that time of $2,958,701. Our budget for this year, for 2015, required the $3,370,100. Which would have left a shortage of $411,399. It was reported that this figure did not add up, and that this is what we would need. This is what the difference would have been. This is not what is needed to fund the police officers, and also with the public safety officers. As you can see from this spreadsheet down here, you need $195,000 for your firefighters, $48,750 for your police officers, $356,000 for your debt service. That's what we estimated. So that total would be $599,750. That is not, again, the $411,000 is not the shortage that we would need for those to fund those positions. That is the shortage in property tax revenues. We made a calculation. We looked at what we had. If we had to raise the taxes to 4.99 mills, we would need that would have given us $3,370,000. However, we agreed to go back and reevaluate this once we got the tax digest from Henry County. We have $716,000. So in order to make that work, we did a recalculation. It's 4.704 meals, and that would leave a shortfall of $2,740. Okay. Can you switch over? What we have here is adopted budget, and just so you'll see, in order for us to get to the revenues, you see here, the $3,370,100. That's what we included in our budget to get to the $12 million. One of the other concerns that was reported, as you see here, this says adopted budget. This is what's advertised on the website. There were some concerns regarding some tape that was posted, and I wanted to make sure this as well. When we're looking at the budget here, as you can see, in our system allow us to have different phases. We have an administration phase, we have a department recommended phase, and each one of those phases is what's printed. So you see here, when we published this, there was tape over each one of these in the meetings because it was going to say adopted. And we did not want that to be out in the public saying adopted when it was not approved. So what you have here is administrative recommended. This is what was taped over and covered up in our meeting. And you can see from there, you would have had these sheets, these lines here, because at that point it's not approved and it's not adopted. We have another phase that we go through in which we speak with our department heads. Again, department recommended. And I don't have the sheet started here, but this started off at roughly $2.4 million. And when we were asked to come back and determine what would the cost be for four firefighters, 4 police officers, I think we had two labor workers for streets, and we did public safety financing of the courthouse. That would have been more. It would have put our millage rate at well over 5% if we had to balance that budget. So this is the phases that we go through to come up, and we made a calculation to kind of determine what was going to be required in order to balance the budget and have the $3.3 million, as you can see, that's needed here for us to balance at the $12 million budget that we have. In your package, you will have a sheet. It's on the 3rd, 4th page. It won't pull up for some reason here. And it is the calculation of the millage rates. It's done by the county. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can try to get a head problem trying to pull this up before I left. But there's a calculation. Let me see if I can pull it out. I apologize. Pull up for us. I was trying to go, but it just couldn't. Apologize. I'm sorry, I can't get it up. It's still not pulling up. But there is one in which the county calculated and shows what the rollback will be and what the increase will be at the 4.387 if we left it the same. And it's right around 9 meals. I'm sorry, it's a 9.83% increase. I believe that's what it was at the time. Is there any questions? And I'll try to as I answer questions, I'll try to see if I can get that for you guys.
You Do you have any questions for Ms. Grant at this time before we open the public hearing? Some statements that you made. Okay, Ms. Grant, thank you, ma'am, for bringing that matter to our attention once again. Those that are present, open the public hearing. What we try to keep, as I said the first meeting, this is our third public meeting that we had on this issue. We're going to welcome you to the podium. Before I do that, I see we have our tax commissioner, David Curry, here. I'd like to welcome him to his town hart, which has been very, very instrumental in guiding updated figures even to 3 o'clock, I think this afternoon was 2:30. And I know you've had a beautiful day, having been at the county, settling on the rate, going to the school board on the rate, and coming to the city hall tonight. So I assume you'll be ready to leave here once we complete. Hopefully, we will not be here that long, but at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we encourage you to come to the podium. Please state your name, and you'll see 5 minutes on the clock. I can assure you I will not adhere to the 5 minutes. If you've got some additional information, we need to hear from you. So the floor is open. We're having a public hearing before we call for a vote. Yes, ma'am. Anyone? Anyone? Welcome to the podium. Mr. Elrod, you still with us, right?
I'm here, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. O'Daniel, well,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I never abandoned 2024 Jonesboro Street. I need a clarification before I give you this, but I've been to all these meetings, and we were always talking about a proposed millage rate of 4.99, but I heard a different total. So is the millage rate proposal 4.99 or 4.7 that gives you the $2,000 deficit? Which one is it? What's the proposal?
It's a 4.77.
Okay, because on all the documentations we've received to date with the property tax analysis, the proposed amount has been 4.99.
and I'm glad you raised that question because that's exactly what it is. I thought that your schedule referred to 4.704.
Yes, that's as we got additional information on the revised millage rate.
But you're absolutely right. On the tentative basis, it was 4.99, sir.
Yeah, those are the notes that we have from the previous two meetings, so I just wanted a clarification that it's either we're voting to raise it to 4.99 or we're voting to raise it to something else. So that's key to the question here. So if it's less, we need to know that it's less, and we need a reconfiguration.
Based on the conversation I've just heard, it's 4.704 as opposed to 4.99.
So my suggestion is that those numbers and the impact on the citizens be published somewhere, because what we've been given is a visual display along the way. There's something more than it's going to be. So without that, we're having a hard time. But in between,
And I hate that. I came into the meeting with 4.997 in my head too. But go ahead.
okay, in between time, I brought a document that I'd like to be submitted into record. After the last meeting, Councilmember Nadi asked me for a list of things I had offered to do, a list of things or opportunities for reassessment of your budget. Because remember, the millage rate increase is solely based on what you needed in this year's budget. So the budget was previously voted with contingent upon the fact that we would raise the millage rate. So I brought a list, and I've got it here to share with everybody, and I'd like it submitted into record, please. And as Ms. Nadi asked, I have provided you something to look at. That said, I will go over really quickly what the areas are. I won't go into all of them so I don't use up anybody's time. But basically, some of the millage rate increase, I will tell you the millage rate increase and the associated budget is to some degree self-inflicted, because in the briefings provided by the city during the budget discussions, $1.4 million of expenditures of an 18% increase were going into personnel. And when you look at the displays, it wasn't just about police and firefighters. It was about a list of other folks. And the city has grown at a 3.5% rate over the last several years in several categories, not just in public safety. So some of this is self-inflicted and not reviewed in a way, because when you increase the number of personnel, as I've talked about in the two other meetings, you are also increasing that large pile of money in the defined benefit plan for both your health care, which I believe you pay entire health care for the actual individual employee, even though the legal requirement is 50%, and you're doing contributions in a defined amount rather than a matching amount, because you don't have a 401k, you have a defined plan. Every single time someone gets a pay raise that exceeds that over time is an unfinanced requirement, and we have yet as citizens to see what the long-term unfinanced requirement is for the personnel account. At the end of that, what that means is if you can't pay it and the millage rate doesn't go to the appropriate level, employees end up with zero. So someone needs to address this amount pretty quickly and display it for us so that we know what the impact is over the next 5, 10, 15 years before we're in this meeting year after year with the same problem. Number one, part of this big deficit is debt servicing, because instead of putting the courts, the municipal court building that you want to build onto the SPLOST list, you've added it for debt servicing to the general fund. Second to that, and I've got an explanation of that, the new position should be hired as a phased-in approach, pay as you go. If you don't have the money up front, then wait till the end of the year and hire what you need, and therefore deferring some of the costs you probably have programmed in the budget. The benefit plans, I've already talked to that, they need to be reviewed. Your training budgets, listen, I'm all for training, but some of you need more training than others. New people, new members of the council need more money in that pile than the guys who are old. You've apportioned $1,500 for everybody. I'm like, hello. If you're new, Rufus, I'm sorry, you've been here a long time. How much more training do you need? Okay, so what I'm saying to you is there's an opportunity here. Not that you shouldn't be trained at all, but I would suggest that Council Member Garner probably needs more training than you do, and Council Member Elrod and Council Member Pruitt. So let's take a look at the training budget, and if they're continuing education requirements, everybody should do those. If they are not, then let's look at a different system, and I've given you some suggestions for that. Listen guys, I empathize with you looking at this budget. This budget display for you is not broken out by cost centers. So how do you compare yourselves to other cities or to other organizations your size if you can't cost center? All your IT costs should be in the display for you, and you should see what percent that is of the budget. That means your wireless, it means all your wired, it means your telephones, it means your web, how do I know, or how do you know whether or not going to SharePoint or buying yourself a circuit is efficient? Because you can't see, pulled out in a cost center, your IT costs. You can't see cost centers for anything. So how do you look for efficiencies? So your displays, even on your budget displays, I went hours and hours through your display. On your display, you don't even have over here percent of increase or decrease. You got to figure it out in your heads. You got to get a calculator and sit down and minus, add and subtract. Hopefully we all went to school so you can do that, and then figure out the percents. Your budget display should tell you. As leaders, the staff needs to arrange budget displays so you can make coherent decisions quickly, not over 5 months, quickly, so you can see where you are comparatively where you were last year, and are you increased or decreased, and what's your spending level. So that needs to be fixed before you can make coherent decisions. Listen, I'm all for Parks and Recs, but I talked about this the other day. The path that you're on today is unsustainable. I like Parks and Recs, but it's unsustainable. In the initial briefing for Alexander Park, the budget that they put forth years ago when we purchased it was something to the tune of $52 million to get it established, and even in the long term, you were not going to be able, even if you charge admission, to pay the maintenance fees over the long term. You were going to have to go to the general fund. That was the initial briefing years ago. But we've not seen any display since, and we haven't seen a master park plan for the entire city. Okay? So as you argue with me about that, let me just finish and let me tell you that we've not seen a master plan for the entire city and what that cost looks like escalated, and what the use of land of green space is going to be in the city, and how much will it cost us. We're piecemealing it across years and you can't see it. It gets lost. So we ought to stop and let everybody take a look at it. Secondarily to that, you need some service goals. I mean, here's how I would fund a department in an increase. If I have a department that's creating efficiencies, saving us money, creating new processes, thereby making customer service better, I read in your budget process, the entire budget is based on your service goals to the public. What are your service goals to the public? I've never seen them. Do we have them? Can we publish them to us so we know whether or not you've met your service goals? Because it says your entire budget is based on them. What are they? And if departments are creating efficiencies or creating new processes to make it easier for customers to interface with you, then we ought to reward those departments and give them more things that they can create and do, but not just because you show up and do what you do. You have no service goals that we know about, and we have no way to grade them. So there's no way for me to tell you whether or not it's efficient or not efficient. There is some discretionary money in your budget. You said look for places. I found some discretionary money. You know where it is. You can go look at that. And asset management, I just gotta tell you. You've got property in your budget that has $0 against it. There's not a piece of property that you own that you can say it costs you nothing. You can cut the grass, you might have to paint it, you might have to turn the lights on once in a while. You can't have a $0 budget against an asset. So I would argue that you can't see that. That's also a cost center. You need to be able to see it. The bottom line for me is this. Some of this is self-inflicted. Some of it is because your displays don't set you up for success and it needs to be fixed for you. But I would recommend that you don't roll back. I don't want you to roll back. But I think that you're at the 4.3867 where you're at is adequate. And you should be able to work against that with the list I gave you and some, because some of the things that you have, you've already justified. You said property appraisals are up, thereby creating more revenue. In your briefings, you said SPOS revenue is up, thereby creating more revenue. You said insurance premium tax collections are up, thereby creating more revenue. Permits and license revenue is up, and I know that you changed the hotel motel tax. So that all being said, there's more money pouring into this budget, and so we ought to go effectively back, redo your displays, and wait to rate on the millage rate so we can have a discussion that we can all understand, and then it's displayed. And you've gone through your lists, and you've looked for every place you can save some money. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that, Ms. O'Brien. Thank you so much. Let's move to someone else. We encourage you to come forward, state your name, and got a clock set for 5 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Grant.
Mayor, I need to make an apology to you, to Mayor and Council. I was looking at the report that I had on the screen. As you see, it was using the wrong, incorrect tax digest of $714,000. It should have been using the calculations. I put the wrong report. The report in your package is correct. If you see here, it's the 647. Please check on this. As you see here, this is what we got from the revised figures we got from the county. The latest one we had 674 here. And the report that I was reading from was revised and it had 716. So the 4.99 is the correct 997.
So we go back to what we started with, the 4.997. That's what I've been working on all day. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, ma'am, for bringing that, for that clarification. That's great. Thank you so much, Ms. Grant. All right, anyone else, please? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Riffy? Nice to see you, young lady.
My name is Gina Riffy. I live on 215 Lawrenceville Street. Sir, last night I came to the meeting, and one of the things you did was you voted on bonding some projects. I was disappointed because in the general fund, we're having to build a new court facility, I understand, with money from the general fund. And I want to know, no one's answered to me why the court facility wasn't on the SPOS list last fall.
Lee, you want to share that with me? We really talked about Millage tonight, but
Mayor, I'll be glad
go
to
ahead.
speak on it.
We're putting together something. Yes.
We are, and Ms. Rickey, the municipal public safety complex was a SPOS project, and that project was done with the land acquisition and also with the construction of the renovation, rather, of the building that now houses the new police facility using SPOS $3. You know, like any SPOS undertaking, not all projects will be funded, not all will be fully funded, and that's where the municipal court fell. Right now, as the mayor mentioned, we're at this point reevaluating all the financing options through the assistance of staff for the municipal court, but that is why it was not on the SPOS 4 list, because you can't carry
why wasn't it put on SPOS 4?
You can't carry them forward. You can't carry forward a project that was on the
But
prior
the parks
SPOS.
were brought forward.
And that was the unless they're in separate phases. You may have phase 1 of something, phase 2 of something. So this was a joint municipal public safety complex that included the police building, included the municipal court complex. That was begun under this, and you can't carry it over. There aren't any discrete phases that were considered to be put on.
It could have been put on as a municipal court then.
Because it was approved as a complex under SPOS 3, that was the position that was taken. That's why it was not included over. Of course,
Well, that sounds like really bad planning to me, I've got to tell you. Because of the way things are structured now, it seems like we need something. I realize we need something. I question whether it needs to be a complex adjoining the police department, because we've got a historic building on the other side of town that we already put a lot of money into. At one time, we talked about an
and I don't get
annex.
to make any of those decisions, you
I
understand?
do, but we talked about an annex down there, which probably would be a little bit cheaper than building a whole new one. That's my concern. I'm wondering about the process that we're going through here.
I can answer your legal questions, but not your policy questions, so I don't get to vote on those.
Oh, maybe the council could, though.
Well, and I think I won't answer those questions, because I just said I can't, so.
Anyone?
I think she's waiting for an answer.
We had a process of drafting something, we don't have it ready. We've had so many things to do today in response to that particular question you raised, some of which is just alluded to. We need to get some of the legitimate question, and we'll provide you with that document, not today, not ready. We can deal strictly with the millage rate.
But you're planning on going ahead and voting on the millage rate tonight, though, in spite of that,
That's
right?
exactly why you're here, and that's why I'm here.
Yes, sir, that is why I'm here. All right, another question I have, and I'd like to thank Ms. Grant, because she promised me some information in 3 days, and she got it to me in actually a little bit less than 3 days, and I thank you for that. Because one of the questions I asked was what sources of revenue that we had looked at. And, her response was, we looked at the fines, forfeitures, and other user fees, and evaluated increased compliance and cuts in operating costs. But I'm wondering what cuts were there cuts made?
Yes, if you look at the budget that's on the website, you will see that there was $14 million that was proposed. We cut out $2 million out of the budget.
But there was nothing cut out of the current stuff that you've already got. That was just new expenses, is that correct?
No, sir. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Those are just
What
new expenses.
departments were they
I
cut?
can't, I'm not prepared to answer the budget question without going through my files.
Yeah, I
to be
wish
exact.
Mr. Gardner was here, but.
You need an extra question
We'll
and leave it
submit
to
an
Ms.
director's
James.
request, we'll pull that information and put it together for you. Some of the information we just can't possibly have right now, and I understand some of it you've asked for previously, but it would help if we could get we can get a written director's request from you, we can pull the documents together for you, and be glad to have them for you.
And the other thing, when I was asking about other sources of revenue, has anyone considered a liquor store? I realize, because I'm gonna tell you, I'm looking at Stockbridge, and Locust Grove, I was in Locust Grove this afternoon. They've got 2 liquor stores and no city taxes.
Ms. Ruthie, just from my understanding, I've heard you say that on multiple occasions. What is it that you're proposing that this body does relative to establishing a liquor store? That's not a policy decision.
What it is, though, is it's another source of revenue.
It is
A
economic.
huge amount of revenue.
It is economic development, you are correct, and generally, based on what have been some modified procedures within the city, there's a certain process that individuals have to go through in order to establish a liquor store in the city of McDonough, and to my knowledge,
I didn't think they could have a.
no one has come forward. There is actually a petition process that they would have to go through. And no one, to my knowledge, has come before the city with an interest in bringing a liquor store. But what we have done in that regard is for our existing businesses who have expressed interest in selling certain items like on the square, we've tried to modify our policies to allow for that. So when we're talking about an increase in revenue as it relates to a liquor store, the implementation of that is having someone to come forward and do it, and we've not had that request.
But that is a possibility should you get a request.
That's an option, yes.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Because I think,
Maybe an option, I think. Yeah, I don't know what it produces.
well, like I said, you know, Locust Grove, the citizens there don't pay any city taxes. Now, granted, they got that little mall, which is probably helpful with that too.
Okay.
Okay, I think, oh,
Is that all, Miss Rick?
for now, so.
All right, well, thank you.
Mayor, when Ms. O'Banion was up, I didn't get an opportunity. I'd like to have a correction, where she said $50 million. The $50 million was if the city of McDonough built a botanical gardens, an environmental art and science center, and a butterfly center, which the city was not going to ever build. That portion was to be funded by outside foundation sources, and it was to be maintained through a revolving fund. So the passive and the active part of the park is a great deal smaller than the $50 million. Those facilities are most of that $50 million. So I don't want anybody left with the idea that we were going to take on that kind of debt service ourselves. That was to be done over phases, if and when that could occur, that we could get just a moment, we could put the infrastructure in place, we could have the property under the proper, we had proper deed structure and various things of that nature. All of those things, the foundation for the park and the park that we could use with or without those buildings is what we were seeking and what we continue to seek for the public.
Well, but can I be clear for just a minute? My question was, my submission was this, that since that original plan was presented, you continue to acquire some property using SPLOST 3 money and others. And so therefore, it's time to go back. When we bought it, we thought we were going to have 143 acres or 103 acres. There's a whole lot of smoke and mirrors going on here. So the truth is, what I asked for was a review and a presentation to the public.
It was never smoke and mirrors.
Okay. Oh,
Under any circumstances. And Ms. Riffey was a part of that.
Yes.
How you
Hello,
doing?
Bill.
How you doing?
Yes, sir. Welcome, Bill.
Fine. I'm Bill Rhodes. I live on 129 College Street. I have not had the ability to review all the numbers for the total budget. I went online and tried to find some information on positions and filling those positions because I could not find it on the city web anywhere. I also did not take the newspaper. I'm never home enough to read it, so I don't take it. So I did not know about these meetings until I came home and I sat on my neighbor's porch with coffee. I'm here to defend the portion that I have the most expertise in, public safety. I'm here to defend the improvements needed in the fire and police departments to provide a safe environment for my family in this community. We have grown 4 times the size we were occupants. And I don't know, talking to Steve or Preston, the number of calls that come in regularly, but I do know that we have 3 firefighters on duty. We have 2 trucks for them responding. If you look at any national standards, you cannot manage a medical emergency with one person. Even two people, if you have a family member who's distressed and crying and upset that her husband or wife is dying, needs to be taken care of also. So it's difficult for two people to manage a cardiac arrest, a heart attack, a stroke, gunshot, stabbing, auto accident, whatever it might be. In the time that you have those initial responders on the scene, I realized after being around Stephen, we have automatic mutual aid with the county. We still have a response time that we have to deal with that will provide a salvageable situation when it comes to human life. I want to know that if my neighbor has a heart attack and McDonough Fire is responding to their house, that if myself or my wife have a heart attack, in the excitement of seeing my neighbor upset, I can be responded to too. So I personally support the improvements in the fire department positions. I have not had the opportunity to research the pay scale. I want to be transparent. I want to be clear on some things. I know that actual salary is not the only cost to the city. There's insurance, and there's pension, and there's sick leave, and there's other benefits that we afford our employees that they will consume. And I agree with the young lady who mentioned that that should be also defined. Going back to the website, I expected to find a list on the website of what positions would be proposed, what the justifications for the positions were, and it wasn't until I walked in this room, and I thought I was going to pick up a document that stated this. I didn't. So I'm not the most brightest person on the website, but I'm probably smarter than most people in town, and I should be able to find the information on the website. I did find the exact information that's in the document that was handed out when I came in, the overall cost. I'm not as experienced in police departments as I am in fire department. I have 42 years in the fire service. But I will tell you, it doesn't take too many brains to know that if we have a compromised number of police officers, and we have the 155 corridor right down in DeKalb County that has a high crime rate, that for someone to say, we'll call in a false alarm about an auto accident and entrapment at I-75 and 2081, and we got all the policemen going that way and all the fire department, and then we just go to Publix and Ross. I believe we need to also support improving the police department. And thankfully, I have not had the experience to be in the courtroom. I do know it's an old church that was purchased or rented. I don't know. It was probably a cost-saving, effective thing at the time. But I believe to be a leader in the community, we cannot follow Jonesboro or Morrow. We have to be a leader, and we need to have the best-in-class court system, police department, and fire department that we can afford. I have talked to several of my neighbors on College Street. The little amount of money that it's going to cost to have that sense of security is nothing. I mean, you can compare it to a possible cost of a life, the worth of value of someone's life, or not getting medical care in a timely fashion without stroke and be a vegetable, no longer can provide for their families or for their, even pay taxes. I'm afraid if we don't provide a safe, effective location for homes for people to live in, what we're going to end up is I'm going to rent my house to somebody. I'm going to move to a community that does. And now I've got someone living in my home that's not a stakeholder, that has no interest in the community or involvement of the community, but they live in my house. And I'm paying taxes because I'm not comfortable at risk. I can only speak to the police and fire and the court system. I wish I knew more about what's going on in the general budget. It was proposed to me that I would owe more, around $80 a year of taxes based on the assessment on my home. I believe my family and my life is worth more than $80 a year. I don't know how we compare to Jonesboro, Clayton County, Morrow, Forest Park when it comes to the taxes we pay. I do know that there are liquor stores in those communities, and they do bring in a sufficient amount of money. But let me also say, the readiness, availability of liquor, even though I'm a casual drinker, could put more burdens on the police department. which may cost more revenue coming in on fines and taxes from people being arrested. So I would have to defer that comment to Preston for him to give an educated opinion on how it affects the police department, how it looks going in the community. Okay. But liquor belief that liquor stores, I take the product home, I consume it at home, where I don't consume it in a restaurant somewhere and then drive home. So it kind of balances out. And that's about all I got to say about the public safety section of the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Thank you so much for your comments. Yes, sir.
I'm old and I'm slow, but I'm gonna get there.
That's all right. That's all right. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
Right.
Bruce Westcott, 22 24 Jonesboro Street, McDonough, Georgia. First, let me say it's a pleasure to be back in McDonough. And even though Preston said I only have an hour before you escort me into the city limits, I'm gonna have the most fun I've had in a long time, so thank you for that. Your Honor, distinguished council members, former mayors, chief of police, chief of fire, personal friends, colleagues. I'm not running for mayor or public office, but I do still believe strongly in this process. I still do believe that you have done what I consider this time an outstanding job at getting a budget together. It's not that long ago that I would stand up here and a gentleman with a yellow legal pad would wave it at me and say, that's our budget. Well, at least I can say that we have something to look at. I applaud your effort, because the people who are new to the city don't remember those dark days. So we now have something we can analyze, we have something we can look at. So, kudos. You do not have to be wrong for us to be right and vice versa. There are no winners and losers in budget battles. You just redistribute the deck chairs of the Titanic as you sink. So, my philosophy in this is to look at things that we really need, and things that we don't need can be put in abeyance. Not that they're not worthy of being funded, or that they should be cast aside, but in tight times, like we have right now, you have to make really hard decisions. And I'm not going to lecture any elected official on how hard those decisions are, because you folks are the ones that are going to make them. And they're very difficult. There are no right or wrong answers. You have to do what you think is correct. That's why you were elected by us, the people in this room. So, thank God you're making these decisions. But I did notice last night when I looked at the budget, several things that pop out to me. Most of you know who I am. I have a lot of executive experience with large, complex budgets in the Department of Defense, governmental budgets, in the billions of dollars. Now, the only difference between your budget and the budgets I looked at were the number of zeros after the line items. Line items are line items. So I would say you're at a decided disadvantage as decision makers at the executive level with not having an executive summary. Nowhere in this budget could I find an executive summary that said, this is what we're spending for police, this is what we're spending for fire, this is what our priorities are, this is our strategic plan, this is how it matches together, so that the citizens could look at it and say, that's a good thing. It's not there. So you as decision makers at the executive level are really in the same place I was last night at midnight looking at this budget. You have to flip through it, you have to get out your calculator. It's light years ahead of where you were, but it's not quite there yet for the decision-making process. I'm not going to attack the park. I think enough's been said about the park. Gail, I understand your position there. And again, I'm not going to make you wrong or me right. That's not why I'm here. But there are several areas that I have expertise in that I would like to lend to you. The first one is this executive decision-making process. Your strategic plan for the city, your goals and objectives, a 5-year plan. It's not represented in budget goals that we can see as your constituents that make any sense, at least to me. And I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, just like my colleague here who talked about it being a firefighter. But you need to have that information to do what you've been tasked to do, what you've been elected to do. I'm a strong supporter of police and fire. Both these gentlemen, aside from professional relationships, are personal friends of mine. I know the challenges that they face. I've faced those challenges, on both sides. As an emergency responder in the military, as a law enforcement person in the military, being responsible for city-sized plots of land and overseas, God knows what we did. Same kinds of tasks, mission building, country building. So I strongly support those modest modest increases in first responders and police. But you can attain those goals, if you're really looking for $400,000, by just tightening your belt in several small areas. I work for Verizon Business. I'm a program manager for the Department of Defense. I had to move out of my home and leave the great city of McDonough because there were no jobs here that could support my family and my way of life. I live in North Carolina, in Cary, in just south of Raleigh. I want to move back to McDonough. We need a robust business environment here. And I can't do that until something happens with the way we approach our business case here in the city. On your IT costs, where I do have some expertise, I would strongly recommend an outside agency come in and do a complete audit of your IT department and what we call unified communications. What you're looking at is you look at your circuit cost separately, you look at your wireless cost, your cell phones, your Wi-Fi, and tablets. In unified communications, which is state-of-the-art like this gentleman Skyping in, which I also applaud, you can get bundled rates from the big 3 or 4, which even here in McDonough, they will do this for you. And you can save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on your bundled rates. Time Water does it, Comcast does it. You can get it right down to each level of detail. I did not see that in the budget, nor have I seen any initiatives to take a look at that. You can even make deals with these Comcast providers to give you free cell phone coverage for the top division chiefs, the council. I mean, all of this is negotiable. All is on the table, it's all legal. But you've got to seize the opportunity. And lastly, the thing that bothered me, I think, with the budget, other than those points that I've already made, is that $400,000 in your budget is not that hard to attain. You can find $400,000. You can still do the police and fire. You can still do your top 5 initiatives. But somebody's going to be what I call a little there. And until you get that data that you need to make that analysis, you're just throwing darts at a wall. Who gets up and speaks the loudest? So who calls Roger at 11 o'clock at night and says, Roger, I want you to vote this way because I voted for you, or any one of you on the council, and that's not fair either. So I strongly suggest you do that executive summary, you postpone this vote until you get that data, and then you reconvene it with the city, all your constituents, and we can take a look at it together. If we look at this together and we approach it together, we can succeed. If we do it divided, we all know what happens. Thank you very much for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. Thank you so much. For the others that would like to be heard, we welcome you to the podium. Welcome anyone to the podium at this time.
Well, Your Honor?
Yes.
I did have one other thing.
Yeah.
My colleague, Mr. Riffey, and I are going to pursue getting a liquor store.
Oh.
We just decided, so you can write that down.
2024
Jonesboro Street. We want to have that right there in the oldest building in McDonough. So you heard it here first. Thank you for letting us know we could do that, correct?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Westcott. I want to thank everybody that was here tonight. We up against the time frame, so we'll be making a decision. I appreciate your comments relative to another time, and in the morning at 9 o'clock, Roger and I, as we alluded to last time, will begin line by line of the budget. That's not for us to discuss tonight. At this time, Mr. Elrod, are you still connected?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. And unless someone else would like to speak, I want to give you all the opportunity to be heard. With the councilman here, I want to close the meeting. Anyone else, give you one more chance. We welcome you. All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Next item will carry us down to number 7. Before I get to number 7, based on what we all talked about earlier, I want to thank Ms. Grant and the work that she's done. But again, thank you for being here, for being a participant. And I too appreciate and respect the work and recommendations of our finance director city administrator relative to the proposed 2014 millage rate of 4.997. As a result of all of our collective hard work, mayor and council included, members of the public too, I would like to announce an alternative recommendation of a partial rollback rate of 4.375. At this time, members of the council, I entertain a motion that our 2014 tax millage rate be set at 4.375.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. Now, council members, each and every one of you will have an opportunity for any questions, any comments relative to this tax rate. 4.375. Once you have your comments, I'll share some additional comments. Anyone?
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know where to start. The first thing I'd like to say is, the proposal of 4.375, I have no idea what that's based on. This is the first time I'm hearing about this at this moment, so I'm a little bit disappointed that this proposal didn't come forward prior to now, because I am one who appreciates the value of reviewing data. The other thing is, I'm somewhat disappointed, and I know that everyone is deferring to you as leader and the chief administrative agent of the city to make comments in response to some of the things that have been said tonight. So I'm a little bit baffled by the fact that when we heard those great comments from several individuals concerning having goals and objectives and establishing priority rankings and all of the other different matrix items that they identified, that no one once spoke up and said, we did that at the beginning of the year. Also, we did not indicate to the public that while the executive summary may not have been a part of what was presented to the public, and I do agree that it should be a part moving forward, that document was presented to this mayor and council and adopted by this mayor and council and made public on our website. So anybody who's interested in knowing what the categories are, the service goals are, it's on the website. If anyone is interested in knowing our budget and what the analysis of it is in terms of a summary budget, that information is on the website. Sometimes when these comments are made, it sounds as though we're in the dark ages and what we're doing is archaic. And the professional staff that we have, that's not indicative of what they have brought to this body. And we have gone light years ahead in terms of what's been asked of us. And to not indicate that on this evening makes me feel like either we're participating in the process and we don't understand what we're doing, or for some reason there is intent behind not explaining on this evening that that information is in fact available. So I think from a procedural standpoint, I will state this. I doubt that anybody would agree with me, but we have advertised a millage rate of 4.9, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we've advertised to the public. I think we should at a minimum vote that down and then issue a motion to accept 4.375, but not in any way should we just totally disregard what we have in fact published to the community.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I would like for you to explain the 4.375, and my concerns have been and remain and have been for year after year after year of increasing personnel with both our fire and our police department. And I would like for you to explain where and how we are going to be able to take care of providing the police and the fire requests that have been made. That being said, I also know the condition, as everyone else here knows, the condition, ongoing condition of 7 years, 7+ years with the municipal court. And I understand from from our attorney that we now have the opportunity, once things were looked at closer, the opportunity to be able to move forward and fund it from
Splash 3.
from Splash
Splash 3 fund.
from Splash 3.
I think
Whether or not that is sufficient funds to do so or not, I'm not clear on that. I'm not clear that the projects that were begun there, well, I am clear that there are projects that were begun there that were not properly addressed and finished. So I need to be absolutely certain that what we're proposing, that there is enough funds for us to take on the courthouse out of the newfound funds for SPOS 3.
Right, and that's a conversation that Lita and I need to have, that we all need to have together, and why I think the mayor made reference earlier that they're, we're looking at everything again, but that there may be other opportunities to do things that we weren't thinking about maybe earlier. But I agree with you that at minimum, you want to know where the money's coming from.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Nadia, and I appreciate those comments. And as you alluded to, I guess you're wondering, what about the municipal courthouse? I want to assure you, our visitors, and more particularly our citizens as well as the council, that we have not forgotten about it. We are committed to seeing this project through, which has been mentioned on numerous occasions. It was begun under SPOS 3, and we'll see it through its completion. Just that simple. And with the help of the staff, which our city attorney just mentioned in conjunction with Ms. Grant, we'll be taking a fresh approach at available financing options that we discussed today. And ladies and gentlemen, although I cannot tell you the specific finance vehicle that the city will use, I can tell you this, that we will not be asking for a tax increase for the courthouse. And having said that, the other comment was made relative to the fire personnel and to the policemen. I can tell you again that we will find the dollars that we need to find for 4 firemen and 1 policeman. Please be patient with us. We've had a long day. We spent a lot of time, and I noticed, I think Ms. O'Banion said something about 3.385. Boy, I tell you what, we just about in the same boat. Tomorrow morning, we'll start our process. And Mr. Westcott mentioned, it's not going to be hard to find $400,000, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you that right now. Having said that, that's all I plan to say at this time. Any other questions? Then I'm going to call for a vote.
Mayor,
Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Nye.
I believe Mr. Elrod wanted to start, let him speak.
Oh, I didn't get, I'm
And
sorry.
then I certainly would like to.
Yeah, excuse me, Councilman. Go ahead, Councilman, we welcome you. Yes, anything, yes.
I just wanted to say, I feel tonight the same way I did 2 months ago when we went through the budget process, that we really need to leave the millage as close to where it is, if not slightly less, and find ways to find this $411,000, and we can always make a budget revision when we do find the money. And exercise this time to go find it and still the end goal of building the building and adding the 5 positions. But we need to find the money first and not ask the taxpayers for additional money. And I feel extremely confident that we will find that money, and we're going to find it fairly quickly, I hope. So I just want to put that on record and say that's what I feel tonight.
Thank you, Council. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Knight.
I just want to say that the decision that I'm making tonight is based on things that have been said here by our leadership, and that I expect that leadership to be able to fulfill the statements that have been made. I have asked for a very long time about cuts, where they could be made, and I am very glad to hear that and I've also asked for a very long time about the SPLOST 3 funding. And I am glad that we are now at a point, based on the statements made here, that there would be no increase in the millage rate for our citizens. But I will say this, like I did last year, when somehow or another it escaped the budget for the police officers that we had agreed to, I will be on top of it. I will constantly ask for them, and I don't believe that having to wait 6 or 8 months for what we need, and we have needed all along, is acceptable. I think we need to find it immediately, and we need to move forward. And based on the statements I'm hearing, I believe that you are leading us to believe that that is possible. So with that, I have nothing else.
Mayor, excuse me.
Yes, sir, Roger. Yes,
It's $356,000 for the courthouse. But if you take out the courthouse, we're only $54,000 short. So we're only looking for $54,000. We're not looking for
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I wish this proposal, I know you had been questioned several times about do you have a proposal, and I wish that proposal had been made, some time ago. I respect you, I definitely respect you, but I wish they could have made, some time ago, but that question has been out several times. Now, what you said, go ahead. Now, what you said that we are guaranteed the citizens that, the police, fire, and court will be taken care of.
I welcome that opportunity, Councilman. Just that plain and simple. Simply welcome that opportunity. Yes.
Yes, I have several things tonight that makes me uneasy. First of all, tonight is my first time hearing of a rollback of 4.375%. And respectfully, Mayor, I understand that with our constituents asking for leniency on our millage rate. And I noticed earlier during public comments, it was asked to Lee Hampton about our land acquisition and building of the municipal court using SPLOST $3. At that time, she said you can't carry over or carry forward unless it carries phases. And now, all of a sudden, we're asking for SPLOST $3. We're saying, yes, we can use SPLOST $3. So that's confusing to me as well. I am with my colleague, Mr. Stewart. We did ask, could you find the money 3 months ago, line by line, and and you said you have a plan, and the plan never came until the night of time to vote for the millage rate, and it haven't given me any opportunity to look at the plan, and it's unfair to me. So all I can do is publicly go on record and say that the finance director and the city administrator, they presented a budget and a proposal to us 3 months ago. We've had plenty of time to find the money. And respectfully, Mayor, I understand that you guys are saying we're going to find it now, but I'm uneasy because, tonight things are being thrown to me that I've never heard before, and if, this combobulated, you have, the attorney saying one thing during public comments, and now she's saying, oh, yes, we can use blocks $3. So it was a confusing point.
Councilmember Varner, just a point of clarification, you cannot carry over a prior SPOS project to a new SPOS year, so we can't make what was a prior SPOS project, a SPOS 3 project, excuse me, a municipal court complex, a municipal public safety complex, we can't make it a SPOS 4 expenditure. So in answer to Ms. Rickey's question, and it's been posed by other people also, why wasn't it included in the SPOS 4 projects? The things we've been discussing in regard to SPOS 4, no, it can't be a new SPOS 4 project, but can it be, and was it part of SPOS 3? Yes, it was. And in fact, we've already spent SPOS $3 on it. We were required to.
Good, thank you. Anyone else?
I have.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. You talk, maybe. Think it's not right.
And I'm very concerned that we're putting, McDonough's economic future under siege. So I'll just go on record as saying that politics should never overshadow the needs of those we serve. Several members of our body have said that we need to run lean and cut unessential positions. On the surface, that sounds great, but when your operations are already short-staffed, where do you cut? Unessential is not defined by whether or not an elected official likes a particular staff member. It is also disconcerting to hear a peer say, cut the budget, but to offer no recommendations for cutting. This question has been posed on 3 prior instances. Instead, they pull arbitrary numbers out of the air, and when questioned, they only admit that that number is arbitrary and not based on any data. A budget process is a data-driven process. If we are going to be leaders, we must lead and be prepared to evaluate the data and, if need be, to justify our decisions. Current operations and future expansion supports the need. To play to the political narrative of conserving spending is wrong. You can't say cut, but spend, and it's up to the public to start pressuring elected officials to ask how. You can't say cut and then say I bear no holdbacks or reservations on the development of Big Spring Park. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth, and this is not a game. It's not right to say, I don't support a millage increase, and then say to your pet projects, I want to support spending these funds. And what is worse, I'm not done. And what is worse is leading the public to believe that your staff does not know what they are doing and are somehow hiding information and being dishonest. And further feeding to the media information which supports this twisted agenda. 20 years ago, under the leadership of Mayor Billy Copeland, the city of McDonough, with a population of less than 4,000, McDonough had a millage rate of 5%. That's less than what we're proposing on this evening. Under Richard Craig's administration, the millage rate was rolled back at its lowest point of 2.45. When you do a comparison between the number of citizens and a 2.5 millage rate, there is no way to sustain city operations. So how did it get done? What the public is not being told is that during the period of low millage, the funds were borrowed from the water fund, which is a city-owned utility of the city of McDonough. So the city was sustained through artificial means. To Mayor Copeland's credit, when he came back in office, he identified this as an issue And at that point, we had to increase the millage rate to pay back the general fund. Today, we have a very similar situation. Part of the increase in millage will be used to pay back the debt service of a public safety building whose land acquisition was approved under a prior SPLOST, but the construction was not. The other funds are slated to cover 3 firemen, 1 police, mandated insurance coverage because of changes in the law, public works equipment, etc., which will make or take McDonough from a 4.38 millage to a 4.99 millage. With a population of 22,000 plus people, this amount is not excessive. When we compare, as staff has done, the millage rates throughout our jurisdiction, the 4.99 is not excessive. Until tonight, I've heard no recommendation. I have repeatedly asked, I have deferred to leadership, and there has been no recommendation. This amounts to political play. And it's not right to the citizens of McDonough, because right now we can't even afford to cut our grass. Look at Jonesboro Road, look at some of the streets in the city of McDonough, and you will see that we don't maintain the integrity of the city at the level that we should. It is very concerning for me that we are part of a region. And because we are part of a region, and because we are in competition with our other cities, I am afraid that the decisions that we make today, like the decisions that we made back when we rolled back the millage to 2.45, will in fact have a negative impact on those who will sit in these seats and our children who will grow up and be leaders in this city in the future. It's not time to play games. We got to make sure we protect our citizens. We got to make sure that we keep our community pristine. I'm a mother of 4. I don't want to increase taxes, but the numbers support that we are at a position at this point that we are not sustainable. And unless we look a certain way, businesses are not going to come here. We just lost Briggs and Stratton, which is going to have a tremendous negative impact on our economic base. We haven't even done the projections on how that's going to impact us. So how can we sit here and say, we're talking about small percentages. Nobody jumped to 11, 12%. We're talking about 4.99 from 4.38. I don't understand, but that's my comment. Thank you very much, because I take my job to heart. I do the due diligence and evaluate the data. When one of my colleagues said he's now going through the budget line item by line item, I've gone through the budget line item by line item, and I've made the comparisons. And I just think that because of political pressure, we're taking the low road and we're doing a disservice to the citizens of McDonough.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions? We should call for a vote here. I think we've gone from tiger light to the hills of home. And I don't know if anything else can be said. Everybody's had their say, and it is going to be a challenge, an opportunity. And Ms. Price, would you please restate the motion and the second on the floor? Mr. Elrod, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Yes, Ms. Price.
The motion is for an alternative partial rollback of a millage rate of 4.375 to be set for the 2014 millage rate.
4.375, ladies and gentlemen, is the partial rollback rate for 2014. Have a motion and second. This opportunity for each of you to vote at this time. Those that Support, well, just vote.
Point of order, Mayor.
You've already voted, ma'am.
No, I said point of order.
You were a little too late. I'd already voted. I'm sorry.
Well, I do want to ask council
Okay.
whether or not we are required to vote down the 4.99 millage rate prior to voting on what will in fact be a substitute to the 4.99 millage rate.
No, ma'am, there is no such requirement. You've got a motion on the floor, there's a second.
Motion second on the floor.
That's-
And then whatever the results are, ma'am, we'll give you another opportunity to speak. Ms. Price, Mr. Elrod, you'll have to, voice vote.
Councilmember Elrod, I'm sorry.
Yes vote.
And Ms. Price.
There are 4 yeses, but please don't take off your light because I got to record each name. And
Okay.
there are 3 noes.
Okay.
Just a moment.
Let's be absolutely sure about it. 4 is a magic number.
Four yeses and 3 noes. The motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Council, and Ms. Cam and Ms. Simpson. We started at 11 o'clock. Pam Hart, I gotta thank you. I don't know how many times we've talked today. You had a long day trying to get our numbers and figures together. And I tried to reach you this afternoon. Your phone is apparently full, and I couldn't get you. I told Ms. Benson, and it was, we were just got uptown in time for 6 o'clock. Ms. Benson never called me back. So having
Mayor,
said that,
I'm sorry, you called me where?
call me on the cell phone, whatever the number that Ms. Price gave me. With that, entertainment.